Thanks very
Oh,
much.
no, that's okay.
Hi, Mark. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you well, thank you.
Excellent, Mark.
You're looking very dapper.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Listen, I don't know where to look because I don't know, but as long as you can hear me, I can see you on the screen here. So listen, Mark, thanks for joining us. I think it's early morning for you, and you've got a room full of people here that are interested in hearing the conversation we're going to have. And for anybody who doesn't know the ICMM, it brings together 28 of the world's largest mining and metals companies, of which Barrick is a valued member, to discuss how we can collectively make progress on the sustainability challenges facing the world so that our industry maximizes the benefits and contributions to society. So that's going to be the subject of my conversation with Mark today. We're going to be talking about, for gold, what does gold's contribution to sustainable development look like? So another time you can catch Mark and talk to him about other aspects of his company and the gold industry, but today Mark and I are going to be talking sustainable development issues. So Mark, in your words, give us a sense of how you see gold's contribution to sustainable development.
Yeah, Ro, again, hello everyone, and thank you to Mines and Money. We, really, one doesn't usually associate mining with social development and poverty eradication, Ro, but mining is absolutely central in alleviating poverty and achieving many of the objectives of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It's something that I've been very passionate about since I started, and the role of responsible mining comes into sharper focus as the world works to curtail some of the worst impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, which, as we all know, in less than 2 years has undone decades of progress in the fight against poverty and threatens to push up to a further more than 170 million people back below the poverty line. So for us at Barrick, eradicating poverty is as important to our sustainable efforts as reducing our emissions and conserving water. Gold mining and responsible mining in general is a powerful lever if done correctly to catalyze social and economic development, and it plays a crucial role in the achievement, I believe, of the UN SDGs. And in my view, every nation has the right to benefit from its natural endowment, and responsible mining has driven that early development. You go back to COP26, of many of today's developed countries that have been leading this debate around climate change. As you probably know, Barrick also mines copper, and it's our mission to discover, develop, and responsibly mine gold and copper deposits for the benefits of our stakeholders. And that's the nub of it, Ro. And that is that we see stakeholders not only as our shareholders, who are critically important, of course, but we see our stakeholders as the governments and the people in the countries we mine, communities around our mine, very importantly, our local business partners, and the importance of actually embracing them in our business, and then our employees. And our employees not only as laborers, but really as key players, stakeholders in our business. And we need to invest in those, and we do, and the benefits of that are enormous. There's nothing better to liberate somebody in a poor place through a job, a proper, well-paid job. You liberate them not only economically, but also politically and socially. And again, for our world to be more global, and we're seeing today de-globalization, which is really quite sad to witness. Because if we're going to crack this global climate challenge, along with many other things, we've got to look past that to humanity, the vast majority of humanity, which unfortunately are being left behind, both in the conversation and in reality.
So Mark,
I mean, I can go on forever, Ro, but I think that really frames the importance of mining in general and gold mining specifically.
Mark, it's an excellent frame. Why don't you make it specific for us? Because Barrick has operations stretching from one side of the world right to the next and everything in between. So as you look across the operations and where you're prospecting, Mark, give us just maybe your top case study of where this has gone really well, where responsible mining, working in partnership with stakeholders, has delivered extraordinary societal value.
You know, we can show, I've got very good examples, Ro, not only, of course, Rand Gold, which ended up as the most profitable gold mining company over a decade and a half before we did the merger with Barrick. And we built that business on social license, on exactly the thesis that I've just shared with you. A focus of we want to invest in our host countries and their assets, not only the mining assets, but people assets. Our partnerships are critical. And if we're going to, as a mining industry, survive into the future, because we're essential, of course, we've got to become more acceptable to future generations. And I can show you examples. DRC, northeastern DRC, a place that not many people on this audience would like to go on vacation there. We've changed that part of the DRC. When we started, everything that was created in any form of wealth left the country. Today, it's a net inward economy. We started with 30,000 people around our mine. Today, there's 500,000 people. We've made a massive difference, and we've built it with Congolese in Congo. And also, we built 3 hydro power stations. So again, our communities already are engaged with us as far as a greener future. We've brought in solar energy, and all the relocation we've done, people get a house, a real block of land, a title deed, and they have access to renewable energy. And it's been a fantastic success. And I would say the same in Nevada when we combined the Barrick and Newmont assets. Again, that mining footprint wasn't really part of the community. Today it is, and we've been able to demonstrate and participate and help in this last 2 years during the pandemic, not only by engaging with the government of the state of Nevada in finding a better way to collect taxes and make a contribution to the state, but also to embrace our business partners. And we have the same philosophy whether we're working in DRC or Mali or a developed country like the United States. And society wants to be part of its own development. It wants to make sure that its natural resources are exploited in a responsible manner. And young people want to come to work and make a difference. And that's what we've offered. So, and then again, we can go to Dominican Republic. We can show the benefits that we've brought back to Argentina. And so, there's a history to Barrick and some of it, their investments. And what we've been able to show in the last 3 years is with a real genuine input and commitment to partnerships, you can turn that around and regain your social license. And I believe that's the fundamental measure in a successful, sustainable business.
Mark, super interesting. And let's now just cover the other side of it as well. Perhaps in a previous project you were involved in or something you've seen that Barrick wasn't directly involved in, where did it go wrong? Where did an experience of a mining company or the mining industry not work very well with society or with governments? Can you describe any situation like that? What happened? What went wrong? What can we learn?
You know, there is one, Ro, and it's, I think everyone knows it, you know, Tanzania. You know, just a little bit of history, back in the last century, just post the end of the Cold War, the liberation of South Africa and the re-engagement with the sub-Saharan region by the international community, Tanzania was the first country in Africa to really reach out and upgrade its mining code and attract foreign investment. And the mining industry disappointed. The mining investment that came into the country, despite a massive increase in gold price from, you know, at the bottom of 260s in the 1999 all the way up to fairly recently, the state really never benefited, exactly opposite to what I've just described. And Barrick, the previous Barrick, spun out its assets in Tanzania into African Barrick Gold and then listed it in London under Acacia. And very quickly that company became a pariah, and it was not well liked by anyone, not the communities. It lost its social license, it lost its relationship with its host country. It created a bitter partnership between and it migrated into other parts of the mining industry. And the consequence of that was, you know, Bulyanhulu was closed down and under the concentrate crisis, and North Mara, you know, was accused of ignoring its environmental licenses. And when we came in 2019, we set out to repair that. And again, I think, you know, that was a classic example of losing your one social license. And by the way, there are many examples around the world, Ro. But what's important is we could show by doing the very things I've just spoken about previously, we were able to recover that license, rebuild a relationship with the government, and the government's changed since we arrived there, set out a very transparent way of dealing and sharing in the value that we create in our mining endeavors, and develop what we call community development committees, which represent the community within our business, and really work. And sure, we're not there yet, and we can never get there when you work with communities and people, but the change is palpable, and the benefits both for the country, the region, our workforce, which are now predominantly Tanzanian, and us as investors, where it's a mutual benefit. And we operate that under what we call the Twiga joint venture.
Mark, thanks very much for being so open. I think we learn as much from when things went right as we do from when things went wrong. So really appreciate you being as open as you have. I'm going to ask you one more question, but as I do that, folks in the room, have a think about whether you want to pose a question to Mark, because once I've asked him this, I'll come to you and open, and we've got a mic here that you'll be able to ask Mark a question. Mark, the question I wanted to ask you, and we'll be brief on this one, you know, between you and the 27 other companies that make up the ICMM, we represent the largest players in the industry. You know, together we're a third of the global industry, 650 sites, but we know that there are many, many, many more sites than what our companies cover. And in the gold industry, you know better than anybody, Mark, that a substantial proportion of production occurs in artisanal and small-scale mining, which for many people will feel like a unresolved issue for the gold mining industry, about the welfare of people that work in the industry, health and safety considerations, potential human rights violations in that sort of that part of the industry. So Mark, how do you see yourself as Barrick, one of the largest players, relating to artisanal and small-scale mining?
Yeah, I think it's important. Right, it's a great question, and it's a big challenge around the world, not only in sub-Saharan Africa. We see it in South America and even Central America, and of course the Pacific Rim as well. But let's just take Africa because that's the focus of this debate. I think we need to start by being clear about distinguishing between illegal mining and artisanal and small-scale mining. And that's the big issue, because a large portion of the production that you refer to is illegal mining, and it's in some of it it's semi-industrial, and we've got a big problem. I'll just take an example: the DRC and Uganda, Eastern DRC, and we've got countries that produce more gold than some other countries that actually have the endowment, and these countries are not endowed with any gold resources whatsoever. And a lot of that gold is illegal, and there's no taxes or royalties or benefits. A lot of that mining is associated with the abuse of children and women, illegal labor, and it's a tragedy. And it requires an enormous political resolve to work to find a solution. And we've made a lot of progress in West Africa, in fact, in Mali, a very poor country, along with the country government and also the United Nations and the World Bank, in establishing defined corridors. And I would add, when I started out in the early 80s, Mali had designated artisanal mining corridors where you had permits and you were managed and you had to work under specific conditions, and it was very successful. And in fact, with the sort of gold rush of West Africa, all that got trampled on by the mining industry. So we are working with the Malian government along with the mining industry to re-establish those corridors, and we're doing the same in the DRC. And the idea is that large-scale mining doesn't compete with the sort of smaller-scale mining, and we can define geological corridors with high grades and narrow veins that are perfect and that you can process through normal gravity separation, and we can and we can encourage, and we've committed to investing in infrastructure and working with those miners so that we have a better control and we can add to their contribution to that country's economy, rather than just plundering a natural resource, destroying the environment, and not showing any benefit to anyone, including the labor that works for those warlords. That aside, there's another segment which I refer to, which is artisanal mining, and that is a traditional mining activity. It's non-intrusive, it's very simple, it's usually done during the rainy season, particularly in West Africa, and it's operated, and people, we work with those people. They are not aggressive, and they have been doing it for a long time when they don't have anything to work on in the fields. And that's a different model. But the problem is that illegal mining has far out overtaken now the traditional what we call opéage, or artisanal mining, across the African continent.
Great, Mark, thank you. I'm just going to pause for a minute as I look around the room if somebody wants to ask you a question. Otherwise, I've got one last one for you. Folks, anyone?
I mean, we heard from Evie Hambro at the start of the conference about the need to sort of re-establish gold as a monetary asset in the minds of the next generation that are perhaps distracted by crypto or whatever else it might be. I was just wondering, do you agree with sort of, Evie, and what are the steps perhaps that could be taken to do so? Thanks.
Yeah, I think I didn't really agree with his first sort of segue into his presentation, but for the actual recognition of gold as a currency, it's the ultimate currency. It's the only currency that no one can duplicate, and neither can any government print. At the same time, it needs to be more available. So the World Gold Council is very invested in creating one global industry, including all the players, and working with the LBMA to see how we can, first of all, create a traceable record for each bar of gold, to ensure that it's fungible and that it's accessible to everyone. And I think we've made a lot of progress. We're at the very exciting initiative. We are all working hard as miners to do that. And we've seen the gold being introduced as credit card gold, particularly in China, as tokens, gold tokens. And one thing we can say is it's got a lot more credibility and value than crypto, which originally, when it was first introduced, it was unique. We now have so many cryptos, it's difficult to work one out from the other. So I absolutely agree on that aspect of Evie and his presentation, and I believe that we're, as a mining industry, completely aligned in ensuring that gold becomes accessible to everyone. I mean, we've seen, and everyone, I think, is anticipating another major economic crisis. That's why we're seeing investors move out into harder assets and other alternate stores of wealth, inverted commas, like cryptocurrencies. And because the paper assets are really under threat, given all the irrational behavior and the poor management of the economies on the back of this global pandemic. So, I absolutely agree that gold takes its place. And as I pointed out in my discussion with Ro, gold is very definitely a major economic enabler, and certainly in the emerging worlds. And I would end by saying it's absolutely important that we focus on poverty as much as we need to focus on the environment, as well as particularly water. And I would finish by, Ro, just one thing, and no one's bringing it up, but biodiversity, and I know I'm digressing, biodiversity is another one like water that we need to worry about in our efforts to make sure that this planet can be enjoyed by future generations.
Mark, thank you so much. And your comments on crypto tell me that I shouldn't expect you to pay your contributions to ICMM in Bitcoin. So thank you. Now I know not to expect that.
Definitely not, bro.
Listen, Mark, we'll let you go. I know it's early morning for you. Really appreciate you spending the time with us. Really appreciate the candid, open nature of sharing the insights you've had on the aspects of sustainable development that go beyond climate and decarbonization. And I look forward to seeing you next week.
Cheers. See you next week.